It's another issue of Time About the Movies, and today we're looking at the movies of June 2nd, 1995. Six movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just jump on into it. And we'll start off with, of course, the biggest new release of the weekend, which was Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep in the adaptation of the best-selling romantic novel, The Bridges of Madison County. So this is, of course, based off the best-selling novel, which they actually, Amblin Entertainment brought the rights to this before the book even came out. I guess they thought it was going to be a big hit because, sure enough, it actually did turn out that way. Because by the time the movie came out, the novel had already sold almost 10 million copies worldwide, and it took them a long time to actually get the movie made. They went to several different directors, including Sidney Pollack. He was on there at first, and then he turned it down. Spielberg himself was interested in possibly doing it, but he was working on post-production on Schindler's List. He had Bruce Beresford from Driving Miss Daisy attached to it at one point, and then all of a sudden Clint Eastwood came on board to do it, and so that's when Eastwood came on, and Bruce Beresford dropped out because him, Spielberg, and Warner Brothers liked the script by Richard LaGravenese, who had just written The Fisher King a couple years prior to this. So they had, and the writer of this, Robert James Waller, he envisioned Isabella Rossellini from Death Becomes Her to play Francesca, and she was considered in the list, and they also included Angelica Houston, Jessica Lange, Mary McDonnell, Cher, and Susan Sarandon. And it only took, and Eastwood really went for Meryl Streep from the very beginning, even though Spielberg was kind of reluctant to have her in there. In the end, it actually worked out pretty well because the movie itself, it's a pretty enjoyable film. When you get a movie like this, a romantic drama with Clint Eastwood and Meryl Streep, you got this relationship between these two, and the whole movie's focus is on that relationship. And Richard LaGravenese does a very good job putting the script together. He's able to take this book, which despite as many copies as it sold, I'm told it's not really that great of a story. I've never even read it before, but from the people I have talked to about it, they said it's not that great, but they adapted in a way that benefits Streep and Eastwood's chemistry together, and it really does work here. Like, they're not just being put on screen because they're the top actors in here. They're being put on here to tell a really interesting story, and their chemistry just works so well here. Granted, it does get a little bit too sappy, but it never overstays its welcome. I think the movie definitely does work because you have a good script here. Clint Eastwood does a very good job directing this. It's got a nice visual look to it. Eastwood and Streep work very well with each other, and the movie itself turns out to be a pretty solid movie overall. It's one that took me by surprise when I saw it the first time. I really did not expect a whole lot from it, but it was actually pretty good. I highly recommend checking it out. Even if you've read the book and you're not a big fan of it, the movie actually is pretty damn good. So that's my thoughts on The Bridges of Madison County. So let's move on to the next movie and we have here, and that is the dog film Fluke. This takes on a whole different level when you actually see the plot of this movie. It's basically a man dying in a car crash, and he gets reincarnated as a dog, and he attempts to reconnect with his family. So it's kind of like Nine Lives, except nowhere near as bad, but it's also kind of like Oh Heavenly Dog, that movie with Chevy Chase, where he ends up dying and he gets reincarnated as Benji the dog from 15 years prior to this movie coming out, and it's really... and that movie is weird on so many levels because Jane Seymour, the love interest, falls in love with the dog, and it's just icky. And this one is very, very weird, but nowhere near as weird as Oh Heavenly Dog, nor as bad as Nine Lives. It's just a mostly forgettable movie, but man, I mean, you should have noticed it right from the get-go when you have James Herbert as who wrote the novel for this. This is actually based off of a novel from him, and he's written some mostly horror movies, horror-based stories. Like, he wrote The Rats, he wrote The Fog, he wrote The Survivor, and it's just like, there's just so much of this movie that just feels so messed up. Like, the story for this does not really seem like something that's worthy of a family film, but I don't know how they did it, but they made it, and it's a really lackluster film on so many levels. It's just like, wow, what were you thinking when you made this movie? I mean, it's just a mess of a film all around. It was largely forgettable, and I didn't even know about it when I was a little kid. When this was right around the time when I would have noticed a movie like this. But you got some notable names in here. You got Matthew Modine playing the dog. You got Eric Stoltz, Nancy Travis, Bill Cobbs, Ron Perlman, John Polito, Samuel L. Jackson's in this as well. Um, but other than that, though, the movie is pretty bad. I remember watching it, and I was just kind of like, it didn't leave any impact on me whatsoever. Like I said, it's not Nine Lives bad, but it's not Oh Heavenly Dog weird either. It's just kind of lackluster, and the fact that this is supposed to be based off of a more serious horror story, and they decided to turn this into a fun little family film. It's just like, it just didn't work. It just didn't work for me on any level, shape, or form. So that is Fluke, and you can say the whole movie is a fluke. So, with that said, let's turn our attention to a much better film, and that is Ice Cube starring in The Glass Shield. So everyone talks about Friday as Ice Cube's big breakout film in 1995, and then this movie comes along and nobody really ever talks about it, but it's a pretty damn good movie. It's a really good movie that once again shows off Ice Cube's potential as an actor. He's working alongside a really solid cast that includes Michael Boatman, who you've seen on Spin City and Arliss, Bernie Casey, Ice Cube, I just said Ice Cube, Lori Petty, Emmett Walsh, Michael Ironside, Richard Anderson. And it's directed by the same guy that did To Sleep with Anger. And I've seen that movie since I talked about that movie from 1990. It's also a pretty damn good movie, like a pretty fun black comedy. And this is definitely a very good film. This director, Charles Burnett, is actually pretty good at his job. And I've only seen from the two movies I've seen, I think he's done something that, like, he's a very underrated filmmaker in my opinion. Just from the two films that I've seen from him. Who knows? Maybe those are his only two good films, but this is a very good film. It does kind of fall into some predictable territory, but it never slows down to the point where it becomes tiresome. It actually is a very well-made film, mostly sold on the performances by the actors involved. It's a pretty damn good movie, a very underrated Ice Cube movie. If you haven't seen The Glass Shield, I highly recommend checking it out. So, with that said, let us move on to the next movie that we have here, and that is Love and Human Remains. So this is a movie that's set in the 90s, obviously. You have a dark comedy about a group of 20-somethings looking for love and meaning in the 90s. You follow David, a gay waiter who has given up on his acting career, and Candy, a book reviewer who is also David's ex-lover. David and Candy's lives are entangled with those of David's friends, a busboy, a psychic dominatrix, a misogynistic civil servant, and Candy's dates a male bartender and a lesbian schoolteacher. Meanwhile, a serial killer menaces the concrete and asphalt neighborhood in which David and Candy live. I have not seen this movie, so I can't really say too much about it, but it just sounds really bizarre just from that premise alone. And this trailer doesn't really do a whole lot for me either. You see Thomas Gibson, Pre Dharma and Greg, Mia Kirshner, who was just in Exotica and would later be in Not Another Teen Movie. But other than that, though, I really do not know anything too much about this movie, so I can't really say much about it, so... it just didn't sell me from the trailers that they had there here. And it has a weird releasing thing, because it was first released in the UK in 94, came out in Germany in March of 95, then came out in the US this weekend, and then it didn't release in France until 1999, the very end of 1999, December 99. So, that should just tell you something right there, that this movie has just so many different release dates from so many different, over the span of 5 years. It's just like, I don't think the studio really had any real hope for it either, but, I don't know, maybe it is something that I'm just not seeing there, but like I said, haven't seen it, can't really comment on it too much, so that's Love and Human Remains. So let's move on to the next movie, and that is Ang Lee's Pushing Hands. And speaking of movies with weird releasing patterns, this actually was released in 1991. It was actually the feature film directorial debut for Ang Lee, even though this came out after his third film here in the U.S., The Wedding Banquet and Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. You basically follow a Chinese Tai Chi master living in New York City who struggles to find his place in the world. The film shows the contrast between traditional Chinese ideas of Confucian relationships within a family and the much more informal Western emphasis on the individual. So it's part of the Father Knows Best trilogy, each of which deals with conflicts between an older man and an older and more traditional generation and their children as they confront a world of change. And kind of like with The Wedding Banquet and Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, I have not seen this movie. I don't really have a good idea of what to say about it because I haven't seen it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's not good, if it's not a good movie. And this is actually the last of the three films that from Ang Lee that I have not seen, because after this we start to get to stuff like Sense and Sensibility, which comes out later on in the year. Then that follows up with The Ice Storm, Riding with the Devil, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and so on and so forth. And so yeah, that's pretty much all I know about this particular film. But I mean, Ang Lee's been a pretty good director, so I wouldn't be shocked if this wasn't a good movie. So with that said, let us move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is Dance Me Outside. The sad part is I can't look at this title and not go back to the Catch Me Outside girl, because like I don't know if she got the idea from this. I highly doubt it, because if you've seen her, because then she's not really the brightest person for that. But yeah, that's what that's my first thought when I looked at the title for this. That's that stupid Catch Me Outside crap. But anyway, this is Dance Me Outside. This is a Norman Jewison production. Norman Jewison, of course, made Moonstruck. Directed by Bruce McDonald, and you're basically following a story of life on a First Nation reserves in Ontario with Silas and Frank. They're trying to get into college, they're trying to be mechanics, but they find themselves having to deal with girls, family, and murder. That's pretty much all I know about this particular film, because like with the other two movies, I have not seen them, so I can't really say too much about it. And I mean, if there's anything here that's of note here, John Frizzle is a name you might not be too familiar with. But well, maybe that isn't what I'm thinking of. I thought he was the composer on Beavis and Butthead. He's on Beavis and Butthead and King of the Hill. I thought that was him for a second, but but no, that's not him at all. But John Frizzle, Don McKellar, Bruce McDonald wrote this, and you could consider that kind of filler, because I really don't have anything else to say about this one, because I have not seen it. So, well, that was completely pointless. That is Dance Me Outside. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we'll look at June 9th with 5 movies, including Congo from the writer of Jurassic Park. We also have Smoke, Party Girl, Wickstock the movie, and Arizona Dream. So 5 movies to look at next time around. We'll delve into those on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.